Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are all doing well. Thank you so much for the love on my recent videos. My polymer clay, beginner polymer clay artist here. Really loving it. I've really loved the embossing, pushing things into the clay to create patterns. You would have seen me do this anyway, like a couple of years ago with air dry clay. I actually really love it. So this got me thinking. This got me thinking about making my own silicone inlays, my own silicone inlays. And if it was possible to use polymer clay, items that I already have, do some embossing, and then create some silicone inlays using some silicone rubber. And that is where this next couple of videos come in, because I had a go. I absolutely love the results. I hope you find this really helpful, because we can all do it and we can all create our own magical silicone inlays for our epoxy resin and our Jesmonite and any other kind of acrylic resin mediums. Doesn't have to be Jesmonite, it can be anything. So yeah, I hope you really love it. I loved making them, and yeah, enjoy. Now, if you want to make your own silicone inlays for your creations, whether it's resin, whether it's Jesmonite, whether it's anything else, then keep on watching. The first thing you need to think about is, what do you want to create? What inlays do you want for your work that is going to create the most beautiful embossed design in your pieces? Remember, these are going to be creating embossed designs. They're not going to be standing out of your projects, but laying inside your projects. Now, for me, I was kind of looking around thinking, what do I have that I can shove into my polymer clay? But really, my heart went straight back to these ammonites. Now, I got these ammonite molds from Red Hot Moulds on Instagram. Resin Ace on YouTube creates these beautiful molds under the name Red Hot Moulds, okay? I messaged him and I said, if I do this, this is what I want to do, and this is where I see it going and what I want the end product to be. If I do this, is this some kind of infringement of copyright on your design? And he said, absolutely not. As long as I don't go ahead and recreate these molds and then sell them, then, you know, I'm cool. I'm good to do what it is I want to do. So my plan is to create some more ammonites. I'm using a quick set resin because who has time to wait 24 hours? And this is what I have. These are absolutely beautiful. Now, you would have seen these in previous videos anyway, because I'm just in love. There's something about ammonites that are just so mesmerizing. They are hypnotic to look at, and I just think they're the most beautiful things. So I demolded all of these. My next step is to get some polymer clay. Now, it really doesn't matter what polymer clay you use for this. This is going to be creating a silicone inlay for your work. So the actual polymer clay itself, to me, it didn't really matter. Now, I do understand there are differences in clay. Some hold up better than others, but I am actually using Fimo, Sculpey and Arteza, all three together in this video, just to show you that they all kind of work the same way. I was umming and ahhing about using air dry clay. You can use air dry clay for this project. You don't need to have polymer. But honestly, I didn't have the patience to wait 5 to 7 days for the actual air dry clay to dry thoroughly to use it for what I needed to use it for. Now here you can see I've got some wooden stars and I've got the ammonites I've just made. I was thinking about embossing the wooden stars, but I soon moved on. I soon moved on because it was the ammonites what I really wanted to do. The cling film, I can thank you all for this, because actually I started filming this video 3 weeks ago. My first attempt was an absolute failure. I was putting things into the polymer clay. I could not get them back out. It was a disaster. It was distorting all of my clay. So the cling film that you guys recommended a week ago, 2 weeks ago, really came through for me, and now I'm using it religiously in all of my polymer clay projects. Now, all of these pieces are going to go in the oven at 110 degrees Celsius, and because of all the advice you guys gave me, you told me that as long as the oven is at the right temperature, it doesn't actually matter how long you put them in the oven for. It just will make them stronger. So I actually baked them. This is the Sculpey instructions. My brain can't cope with this. 15 minutes per quarter inch of millimeter, 6 millimeters of clay. Haven't got time for that. I haven't got time for that. I'm so sorry, Sculpey. So it's all going in the oven, 110 degrees for an hour and a half. So thanks to your advice, which made me realise that as long as the temperature's good, then it'll all be good. So I'm just gonna spend 10-15 minutes conditioning some clay, and I'm gonna use all three here. And now listen, this was not I did not get this right first time. Absolutely did not. You can use these spacers, these acrylic discs or lollipop sticks to create an even depth in your clay. But honestly, as many times as I tried this, I went with a completely different method. And when I tried this 3 weeks ago, it was disaster all round. Not only did I burn my polymer clay, it did not accept the silicone. I had a major reaction between the polymer clay and the silicone. There were so many mistakes that I made on my first attempt because rather than Google, I like to just try it and see if it works. And it didn't work. So I went back to the drawing board, and these are the results. So on this first attempt, you can see here, I'm rolling my clay out. Now this does work well. So if you'd like to roll your clay out to create some of these small embossed patterns, you absolutely can. So the next step for me then is to get a cookie cutter. All of this is linked below, by the way. All of the clay, the cookie cutters, everything you need to create this is linked below. And the silicone, of course, I am a Let's Resin Ambassador. So that silicone information will be down below with your code for 10% off your silicone. So back to the video. We are cutting this out with the cutter. Now this was just to save clay. I didn't feel like I needed to put all of that excess clay in. Now because this was trial and error and I really hadn't got the hang of it at this point, but I'm taking you through it so that you don't make the same mistakes I do. Of course I'm embossing. I'm pushing down with all of my might. This is not necessarily the best way. You have to remember there's not much clay there. So when it came to peeling it up off the table, quite often I'd have holes in the bottom. So of course the silicone will just seep straight through after baking. So it was really trial and error to find the best method that worked for me. And then I figured it out. The best method that was working for me to get these embossed images was to roll my clay into a ball. I'm not rolling it out with my rolling pin. I'm rolling it into a ball between both hands. This is going to give me a really chunky, luxurious, fat ball of polymer clay with which I have the luxury of space. I can now emboss into this really chunky piece, and this is when it started to work beautifully. It pops straight out with that cling film, and I was utterly... At this point, I just knew it was going to go to plan. I knew it was going to work. I was so happy. But what you do want to do is not do what I did and leave gaps. So this was my first attempt 3-4 weeks ago now. Absolute failure. You can see the colour of the clay. I burned it. Not only that, but it wasn't embossed deep enough to create the correct wall height to hold the silicone. So just know from my mistakes, you want all of the walls to be higher than the actual outer rim or outer wall of the polymer clay or the air dry clay, whichever one you decide to do. Otherwise your silicone will just pour straight out and it will be a hot mess, an absolute hot mess. So once I kind of got that technique down, I just carried on working with it, and then I went in with the larger ammonite. What I did with this one is after I pushed it down with all of my might, I thought, let me bring the walls of the polymer clay back up around the ammonite. So I was able to actually manipulate and push the polymer clay back towards the ammonite, creating this super solid wall. So I knew that when I'd baked this and this was rock hard and I pour the silicone in to create my silicone inlay, that wall is not budging, and I'm definitely not going to get any of the overspill that I got in my very first attempt 3 weeks ago. And here you can see where the cling film just saves lives. Cling film saves lives, okay? It saves polymer clay lives. I am a convert. Perfection. I absolutely love this one. Do you know, even on its own, as a piece of home decor, I think that's actually pretty in its own way. That could quite happily go in a box frame with some beautiful Cricut writing. But we're not here for that right now. We're here for silicone mould embossed inlays. So the next thing I'm doing is just cutting all around that edge. Look at all this clay. This clay is just not needed in what I need it for. So I'm just cutting it all away to just leave me with the piece that I need. I did exactly the same with the Arteza. Now, the Arteza was the one that I hadn't tried yet, so I was worried about this working. But in all honesty, all three worked. What happened 3 weeks ago was a disaster. I actually, A, embossed too shallow. B, I baked and burned them. C, I poured the silicone 4 hours after taking them out of the oven, and this was clearly way too soon. My polymer clay had not had a chance to breathe. It had come out of the oven just 4 hours earlier. I don't know the science of polymer clay, but the results told me it was too early. The silicone had actually had a reaction with the polymer clay. Now, I only used Fimo, but the silicone had had a reaction with the polymer clay, and it hadn't cured. I left it 2 days, had not cured. It was a sticky, hot mess. When I went to take it out, it was soaking wet and sticky inside. It just did not work. Now, I didn't want to give up. I just didn't want to give up. So I went straight back. I went straight back to Resin A's. I was like, what do I do? And honestly, I decided to try again with the advice of, you know, embossing deeper, having the walls up around, cooking for longer, leaving the actual polymer clay to cure fully. And by fully, I mean fully. You don't have to leave it for 2 days, but I left my polymer clay creations for a solid 2 days after I took them out of the oven. And that is where I went wrong the first time, and hopefully I can help you to not make the same mistake and let you know how to do it right. Okay, that is what we are here for. And anyway, let's crack on. You can see me here bringing the walls up again. Now, I think this one is the Sculpey or the Fimo. I kind of used all of them, so this is what I'm doing. This is unnecessary. Don't do that. You don't need to do that with the rolling pin. I don't know why I was doing it. I just wanted to see if it would give me a flatter surface. But this is the difference between the Sculpey and the Fimo. I didn't realise how off-white the Sculpey was, and the Fimo on the table is the actual white. It's so much whiter. But this is all three done. My next step is to put them in the oven, 110 degrees. I'm actually going to put them in for an hour and a half, and we'll see how they go. Okay, they baked beautifully. I did not burn them. This was an hour and a half at 110 degrees Celsius, and this is 2 days later. I put them to one side. I let them fully cure, fully dry out, fully get cold, whatever it is you need to do. I am using, of course, the silicone rubber from Let's Resin. This is a part A, part B mix ratio, 1:1, non-toxic, no odor, and it is measurable by weight. So all I did was weigh out equal parts A and B, mixed it thoroughly for 5 minutes, and now I am pouring from really high up. The higher up you pour from, the better it's going to knock out. It's basically going to knock the wind out of the silicone. It's going to knock the air bubbles out of the silicone as it lands and reduce any potential air pockets. Now, I haven't had any air pocket problems in this silicone at all. I can physically see with my own eyes the air bubbles coming to the surface after I pour. So I've never had any issues with that, but pouring from a height is going to diminish any risk of air bubbles. So far, so good. Now guys, this is 2 days later. It didn't need to be 2 days later. This silicone is an 8-hour cure, but actually I was away, so I just let them sit there and do their thing. And I was so happy at this point, because it wasn't just sliding out in a hot sticky mess. I realized at this point it had worked. It had worked, and I got my silicone inlay. How gorgeous is this? I was so happy. It was not sticky. It was dry and squishy, exactly as you would expect silicone to be. And I was just, I cannot tell you how happy I was, because I'd wanted to try this for so long. And after trying and failing and crying and seeking advice, I honestly was just over the moon that I was actually able see guys, I'm losing my words. Breathe, Claire, come back. I was able to actually create my silicone inlays. Now, one of these I feel like is better than the other. I feel like the deeper the mold, the better. The one on the right seems a little bit loose around the edges, not quite so crisp around the edges. But again, it worked for the small ones too. I got some gorgeous little inlay. Oh, it's so cute. So cute. And again, it worked with the Ater. So it worked with all 3 polymer clays, and I know it works with air dry clay as well, guys, because last year I made my own silicone molds using air dry clay. I didn't use it for inlays, but you know, the science kind of tells me that it would work as well. This is what you can use them for. Inlays are silicone pieces that you can put into your molds, stick to your molds by suction, and create some gorgeous embossed details in your molds. Now, again, recap, I used the silicone from Let's Resin, I used Sculpey, Arteza and Fimo polymer clay. They all worked a dream. I left the molds to kind of cure thoroughly for a couple of days before pouring my silicone. Moving forward, you could try absolutely anything. Grab anything you can that you think would create a beautiful inlay in your mold. Now, straight away, my mind is going to seashells, anything like that for that beachy vibe. Also making sure that whatever you create a silicone inlay for, that you've got a mold that is deeper than. Because if it's too deep for your mold, it won't work. You'll just have holes at the bottom of whatever it is you're creating. And yeah, so happy with the way this came out. So excited to use them. I was going to go on and use them in this video, but honestly, I just think that video would then be too long. And already a lot of people won't be here at the end anyway. So if you are here at the end, leave me a pink heart or a blue heart or a green heart or whatever your favourite colour is. And I appreciate you all massively. I hope you found this video really helpful. And I hope it sparked some joy in you like it has in me. I just cannot wait to use these and try them out. Now I am going to be doing videos using them in epoxy resin and also Jesmonite. So it's not just a one-trick pony. You can use them across all of your kind of acrylic mediums. And yeah, I cannot wait. I hope you've enjoyed this one, found it helpful, found it useful. All of the details will be linked in the description box below. Do not forget that big fat thumbs up. That is what helps me grow. I really appreciate you all, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.